Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial, music encoding tutorial. Today we're going to be making a metronome, and you all know what a metronome is, so I don't have to introduce it to you because of course you practice using a metronome every single day, I know. Alright, now that you have been introduced to what a metronome is, I want to show you what this one can do. It's pretty simple. You just click start and you hear the click, you just hear a beat. You can change the tempo here. Right now it starts at 140 beats per minute, but if I slide this slider here, it will change the tempo. You can do up or down. You can also just increment by 1 every time you click this plus sign. And right now it's playing in 4. If we want to play in 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever, we can do that as well. So now there are 5 beats per measure, and every single first beat per measure is accentuated. Like you can hear it. It's easier to hear. It's a different sound playing. Pretty simple. So yeah, that's what we're going to be building. Let's get started. And a good way of getting started is to open up your favorite text editor. Right now, for me, it's Visual Studio Code, VS Code, and I have a folder actually on my desktop right here, and inside that folder I have an index.html, an app.js file, and a style CSS, and then I hook up everything here. I link to the style sheet here, and I link to the JavaScript file here, and that's basically what we're going to be starting with. These are totally empty. So to begin, let's see what we're actually going to build. So if we have a look at this over here, we can see we have a display displaying the BPM, the beats per minute, the number of how many beats per minute. And we have a little text here that you can slide up and down. You can, that's just for fun. We don't really need that. It's just an extra little thing that I added. And then we need some buttons. We need a slider, a start stop button here, combined start stop button, and then some buttons here so we can change the beats per measure number here. So we should probably get started by making a little container for this thing here. I'm just gonna make a div, give it a class of container, because then we can put everything inside here and we can control where we want the metronome to be located at. We can put it exactly in the middle. We'll do that later with CSS. And then I'm going to just make a div with a class of metronome, because that's where we're going to have all our metronome stuff. The first thing I see up here, that is the BPM thing. So I'm going to create another div inside the metronome, and I'm going to call it my BPM display. So that's going to be a div with a class of BPM, which stands for beat per minute, and display. All right, so inside the BPM display, we want to have the tempo here, that we can see the number here. I'm just going to make that a span, and we're going to give that a class of tempo. And for now, I'm just going to put something into it. I'm just going to put 140, so we have something to look at. It's not yet controlled by JavaScript, but it will be later. And then let's add another span for the BPM, this part here. We're going to give that a class as well so we can style it. I'm just going to call it BPM, and inside of it, we're just going to call it BPM as well. All right, so far so good. Okay, so underneath here, we have this little cool text that where we can write something funny. So under the, not under the metronome, this is the metronome closing tag. So right here under the BPM display, I'm actually going to make a div, give it a class of tempo text, just like this. And for now, we can put something in there. We can just gonna write super fast. All right. And underneath this, we're gonna need the settings here, some tempo settings. So I'm gonna make a div just for those, and I'm gonna give that a class of tempo settings. And first of all, right here, I'm gonna make another div, and I'm gonna call it adjust tempo. This is going to be the minus sign here. Adjust tempo. And actually I want to, because we want to style them equally, so we want to style them the same, the minus and the plus. There are only a few differences. So because of the differences, I'm going to give this a decrease tempo class name, and I'm going to put a minus in here. Then I'm going to take this one here, and I'm just going to copy it, and it's going to be the same here, but here I'm going to call it increase instead of decrease. All right, and then of course we need a plus here. So far so good. So in between here we need the slider so we can slide up and down, and that is going to be an input, and the type of the input is going to be a range. And because we don't want it to play too slow or too fast, like we don't want it to be 0 BPM because then nothing's going to play, obviously. Then we're going to set a minimum value, and that is going to be, I think, let's say 20. And we're going to set a max, and you're probably not going to be playing much faster than 280 BPM. So, and then we want, every time we move this slider, we want it to step by 1. So every time we move it to the right, we're going to add 1. Every time we're going to move it to the left, we're going to subtract 1, not 1.5 or 0.5 or whatever. And then of course we want to give it a class so we can style it. I'm just going to give this a class name of slider. Okay, so far so good. We are also just under the tempo settings here. We will make a start and stop button. I'm going to make that as a div as well. Oops, I'm going to give it a class name of start, stop. And inside here, just to begin with, we can just type out start because that's the first thing we want to do. And then we need to have this little thing down here. I'm going to create a div just for that. I'm going to give that a class name of, let's say, measures, like that. And then inside this measures, we are going to have, this is going to be the subtract beats. So we're going to make a div and give it a class of subtract beats. And it's also a stepper. So I'm just going to, because we can style it. So we're just going to be step up, step down. And inside here, we're going to make a minus as well. We are going to, actually, let me just copy this one and paste it in here. And this is, of course, going to be add beat and then plus instead of a minus. And in between here, we want to display this number 4 to begin with. So I'm going to make another div, give it a class of measure count, because that is the number that represents how many beats in per measure. So measure count is we are going to just put 4 in here to begin with. So that is it for now. Now we need to style this up, because if we go ahead and we open this up in the browser, and I can just right click on the index.html and open with live server, and that's because I have the extension live server installed already. You can see it's right here, install live server. If you don't have that, as always, you can search here and you can find it, you can install it, and you'll be happy you did. Let me go back to the files, let me right click on this and then open with live server. And it's going to open up here, and it looks nothing like the one we're trying to build here. But it looks like there's something going on here. So now we just need to style this up. Let's get started on the CSS. Okay, so first of all, we're gonna just target everything here because we want to remove the margin and the padding from everything. So I'm just gonna go padding 0 and the same for the margin. Like that. Okay, I'm gonna save that, and as you can see, it removed the margin of the body. But also we want to import a font because we don't want to use this standard font. So if you go to Google Fonts, I already did that here, and you search for Railway, R-A-L-E-W-A-Y. You can find it here, and the ones that I like to use here is the 400, the regular 400. That's just a normal one. I'm gonna click on the plus, select the style, and then you get some info out here on the right. We also want the bold, and that's the 700. So this one here. Let's select this style as well. And we could put a link in our HTML file, but we can also do an import in our styles directly. So I'm going to click on this one here, and then we don't want the style tag, we just want what's in between. I'm going to copy that, and we can go back to the file here and just paste it in on the top here, and you can see it's importing the URL from Google Fonts. So we're going to be using that. So the next thing we're gonna do is let's style up the body here. And all I wanna do here is just set the font family to the one that we just imported. So font family, that will be Raleway. And then we want a fallback font, which is just a sans serif. Just like that. And then I would like to set this font color everywhere to the same color. So we're just gonna say color and have a nice dark gray, which is 52, 52, 52. That's right. And then, yeah, that's about it right now. I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna go back to the browser. We should be able to see that that's the browser here. We're gonna be able to see that it the font is different now, and we do. So that's great. So the next thing we're gonna do here, we have a container that contains everything here, and we want to set that. We want to give them that some sizes so we can center everything on the screen in the browser. So the container. First, we are going to display flex. And then we are going to justify the content to the center. That way we center everything. And as you can see, everything is in the middle here. If I drag out here, you can see it still stays in the middle. But we also want it in the center, like the vertical center. So I can use align items here, and I can say center as well. But because we haven't set a height on this container yet, it doesn't know where the center is because it doesn't have a height. So we're just gonna set a height, and we want it right in the middle. So we're gonna say 100 VH, which stands for viewport height. I'm gonna save that. We got it right down here in the middle. So so that's all for now. Now we need to style up this this metronome. All right, we want to display this one as flex as well, so we can center everything inside of it. It's much easier to control with flex. So we're going to start with display flex, as always, and I'm going to save that. And then you can see it displays by default in a row. So by default, it's going to display everything in a row, as you can see over here. But we want to change that direction, so I'm going to say flex direction, and we want a column here. And if I save, you can see it gets back here, and that looks pretty good, but we want to give it a width as well. So I'm gonna start with giving it a width of, let's say, around 300 pixels. So it's gonna move it out here to the left because now it's 300 pixels. And but if I take this one here and it's gonna be actually, let's just add a border around it. Just so we can see what's going on. 1 pixel solid. That's just a black border. All right, so we can see here it is. It's about 300 wide. So we want to center that. So you can see the box is still in the middle of the browser window, and we'll delete that later so it looks a little bit better. We are also going to add a height to it. I want the height to be about 250 pixels. So. Oops, 250 pixels. And then I want to justify the content to have space between, so it evenly spaces out all of the elements we have here. So that would be justify content and then space between this one. And you can see it distributes these elements evenly in the container. So far so good. Let's try and move on to styling some of the BPM display up here. So we want this to be a big fat red number. So first of all, let's see, what is this? We have the BPM display. So let's target that one first. So BPM display. This one, we want it to be 100% wide, because we want it to be inside the 300 pixel wide container, metronome container that we have. So I'm just gonna set 100% here, so we know it's 100% wide all the time. Then I'm going to text align the text to the center. and just like this. Now it moved to the center, and we're gonna give it a color of, it's a nice color, FA545C. It's a nice red color. So now we change the color right here. Okay, so we want to give this one a bigger font size than this one. So we already here, we gave this a class of tempo and BPM. So if we go ahead in our BPM display, so inside the BPM display, we have another class called tempo. Oh, what was it called? I think it was called tempo, wasn't it? It was. Good. So class called tempo. And this one, this is where we can set the font size. So let's do that. Font size and 4 ems to begin with. Okay, that's pretty nice. All right. But we want it to be bold, so we're gonna set font weight bold. So that looks much, much better. All right. I want the BPM to be bold as well. So I'm just going to take this one here, remove it from here, and then inside the BPM display, I'm going to say font weight bold. So we have both the BPM and the number displaying as bold text. All right. And then we have the tempo text here. We want to center that, and we want to make it all capitals, like so it looks like this. So we can start doing that. That is also, we call that tempo text as far as I remember. I'm gonna give that a smaller font size. I'm gonna give it 0.8 ems. So now it's smaller. I am going to also text transform because I want it to be all uppercase. So text transform uppercase. Now it looks uppercase, and then we're gonna align the text with text align to the center, of course. All right, now it's displaying like this. It's getting better and better. All right, the next thing we want to style is this part here, the minus, the plus, and the range slider here. So let's go ahead and make some lines here. I'm gonna add some lines here so it's easier to see for you guys. In here, in our index HTML, we have this called tempo settings. So first of all, we gotta take this one and we're gonna target that class name in our CSS. All right. So this one as well, I want to display as flex because we want to display them all on the same line. We want this minus to the left, then we want this slider in the middle, and then we want the plus sign on the right, or the button. So I'm going to display flex here as well. So that automatically took care of that. Now we have this one on the left and this one on the right and the slider in the middle. That's because the default is, as we talked about before, it displays in a row, not in a column. I want to justify the content here as well because I want to space it out a little bit. So I want to have space between as well. So that's going to take all of this stuff here, and it's going to take the minus, it's going to be here. This one is in the middle, and the plus is going to be on the right side here. We're going to take care of that later, so it looks a little bit better by changing the width of the slider and making the buttons look nicer. So let's style up the buttons here, the minus and the plus. And in here we have, they're called adjust tempo. So we can just, actually it would be nice to have a class name, just tempo button. So at least we know it's a button. So I'm just going to add that here. And then in our style CSS, I'm going to target the tempo settings that we're inside of, and then the adjust tempo button. We just renamed to that. All right. And so that means that we're targeting both the minus and the plus now. We want that to have a width of 30 pixels and the same with the height. So height 30 pixels, and then we want to make it round. So we're gonna give it a border radius of 50%, which will make it round. And we're not going to be able to see it yet, so we better give it a border. Let's make a border of 1 pixel, solid, and the color DDD. That's a nice light gray. If I save that, well, you can see something is happening over here. We got this going on. So we want to center this. So we're going to go text, align, center. It's not going to center it perfectly. As you can see, the minus is in the top part of the container. So is the plus. But we're going to take care of that with some line height later on. We also want it to be, right now, if I hover over, we just see this select text cursor. We want it to be displaying as a button. So I can go ahead and I can say, I want the cursor to be the pointer. So that will change it to the little finger here in the browser at least. So, oh, I can spell like this. So you can see now it's the finger displaying when you hover the mouse over it. The next thing we want to do here is, well, actually it would be nice to have something happening when you hover the mouse over. So I'm just going to take this thing here, target that, the hover, pseudo property here, so hover. And the only thing we want to do here, we want to change the background to the same color as this one up here. So I'm going to copy this color and it's going to be this background color. And then we want the text to be white. So I'm going to change the color to white. If I save that and I go out here, you can see it's working when I hover over the button. The color changes. Actually, I want to set a font size on this one as well. So I'm just going to go up here and set a font size because we want the plus and the minus to be a little bit bigger here. So let's say about 40 pixels. That should take care of that. Oh, you can see how big they are now. They're beautiful, but they're moving down to the bottom of the circle here. But we got to take care of that now because we're going to take tempo settings. And maybe I'm being too specific here. I could just go ahead and type out the name of the one that I want to, like the decrease tempo here, but I like to have it like in tempo settings so I can see where I actually am. So decrease tempo, we're going to target that, and we are going to move up this minus a little bit so it's centered. So we're going to use line height for that. And let's try with like 25 pixels. Yeah, that's pretty nice. It's in the middle now. That's good. So let's do the same thing for the increase. Just type out increase here. Now let's move to the top a little bit too much. So let's try to move it down a little bit. We do that by, let's try 32. Yeah, that looks pretty much in the middle to me. All right, that's good. So we can move on from here. Now we need to style this one up here. But actually, I'm gonna wait with styling up this this range slider here, because that is pretty tricky. It's very browser specific what you have to do in different browsers. So we're gonna do that later on. First of all, I'm gonna leave some space because this is where I want to style that one up. But let's take care of the start button to begin with. And I think we have the start button here. It's just called start stop. So we can actually just target that with a class name of start stop. And we want to give that a width, about 50 pixels. And we want it to be round, so we want a height as well. 50 pixels. And we want the font size maybe 0.7 ems. You can see the font size changed right now. We want to align the text to the center of the button, so text align center. And of course we want to be able to see that it's actually round, so we need to give it a border and a color. Let's give it a background. I'm just going to copy this one. We want it to have the same background color here. Now you can see it's like this. We want to give it a border radius of 50%. And there's a D too much here. Okay. All right, and we want to place it in the middle. Actually, we want the color to be white as well, so the text is white. Take care of that. We also want to place it in the middle, so I'll move the start text down to the middle. So I'm gonna give it a line height of 50 pixels. That makes sense since it's 50 pixels wide and high. So it moves straight to the middle here. That's great. Then we want to move the whole thing to the middle, the whole start button to the middle. And we can just do that with a margin. And margin top bottom 0 and then auto on the left and the right. So it's going to move to the center here. So far looking pretty good. We're going to make a hover thing here because we want to see that something's going on. Actually, we want a pointer as well here. So I'm just going to copy this one and have cursor pointer right here. So this one also has this this symbol here, this finger when you hover over it. We're going to take this one here as well, and we're going to make a hover effect. So hover, and we're just going to take a little lighter color than the one it has already. So I'm just going to take the background, and that should be the color of FF656C, which is a color that's a little bit lighter than the one it has already. So let's see if it works. I can hover over, and yeah, you can see something's going on. Great. Okay, so far so good. Okay, let's style this part down here. If I go back to the index.html file, I can see that we have, it's called measures here. So let's start by targeting that div and measures. This one we just want to display as flex as well. Just like that. It'll give us all the elements inside on the same line, just like we did with this one up here. And then we want to justify the content to the center. Justify content center, like this. So now we got it right here in the middle, but we also want to make them look a little bit better, the buttons and stuff. So we have inside the measures, I think we call it stepper. Maybe I should have called that something else, but right now it's called stepper. They're both called stepper. So let's go ahead and style those first. So we're gonna give that width of 20 pixels and a height of 20 pixels. And we're gonna give it a border radius, radius of 50% to make it round. Then we are going to actually give it a border. So border, it's 1 pixel solid border, and then of the color, nice DDD light gray color as we used before. And we are going to align the text to the center. So text align center. Something's happening over here. It's looking better and better. And let's space it out a little bit. Let's move them a bit away from the numbers so we can give it a margin. And that margin, nothing but the top and bottom, but just on the left and right. That's 5 pixels, I think. Yeah, it moves it apart a little bit there. That's great. We also want to have the cursor as a pointer. So when we hover over, we see the finger instead. That didn't work. I wonder why. Now it works. All right, we want to get a hover effect on this one as well. So I'm going to copy this one, I'm going to put it here. I'm going to add the hover here. And we want the background to change. And that background will be the same as we have up here. So I'm just going to copy this one. I should probably have broken it out into different classes, a button class and things like that, have 2 different kinds of buttons so I don't have to repeat myself so much, but I did not do that, and sorry about that. But I'm going to change the color to be white text, so FFF. So let's see what happens if I move over here. It looks like it kind of works, but we have a little problems with the, it looks like the minus is pretty much in the middle here. But it looks like I need to move the plus sign down a little bit here. So let's do that. I think that one is called, it's called add beats. So I can go ahead and measures, add beats. So I'm gonna give that, I'm gonna change the line height to 20 pixels, which moved it kind of, yeah, it looks like it's almost in the middle, but you can play around with that until it's exactly in the middle. But now we got something that looks pretty good. All we need to do is style this bad boy here. And that can be a little bit tricky. I'm gonna move up here, and I think we want to put it in order because this is the increased tempo. This is the button here. Actually, maybe we should put it, I'm just gonna put it right here. How do we style a slider like this? It can be pretty tricky, and I had to go on CSS tricks and learn some stuff about that because I don't remember, I never used these. But let's have a look at it. And the first thing we want to do is to remove all of the styles in all browsers. So I'm going to target the input that has the type of range. We only have one, so we can just go ahead and do it like this. And then I'm going to type out this WebKit specific thing, appearance. And I want that to be none, so it's gonna basically just go away. Now I don't see the slider at all, this range. I only see this one here, and I can still slide that back and forth, and I still get this focus thing here, the blue box around it. I want to take the background and make that transparent. Otherwise, it'll be white in Chrome. So if you want to change the background of this whole metronome thing, at some point it'll just be a white box. So background, transparent. Okay, nothing's gonna happen right now. And actually I want to change the width of this. Let's wait with that until we style the rest of it here. So I'm gonna remove the thumb. This is the thumb, this little dot here. I am going to the same way as before. I'm gonna target the input, and the type is gonna be the range as well, because that's the one we're working with right now. Type equals range. And then we are going to add this 2 colons, and then dash WebKit slider thumb. And I'm just gonna copy this line here, and I'm gonna put it right here, and then that should disappear as well. So now we have nothing, we can't see anything. That's a good thing, because then we can start styling it up from scratch. But we still have this focus thing here. If I click here, you can still see this blue box here. We want to remove that as well. We are going to do kind of the same thing. Just gonna take this one here, and still the range. So I'm gonna type focus here instead. And that is, I'm just gonna say outline none. So that should take care of that. It did not. Oh, that's because I don't need this one here. Just like this instead. Okay, that's better. All right, now we don't have anything here. Now we have to style it up from scratch. First of all, we want to style it up for the WebKit browsers, and those are Chrome and Brave and Safari. And then we're gonna add some stylings for the for Firefox, and we're not gonna do anything with Internet Explorer this time because nobody uses that anymore anyway. So in that way, we don't get too much CSS to take care of. But anyways, let's start by doing this one more time. We are going to type out input, and again it's type of range, and we want to start with the thumb. Let's do that. So that's again WebKit slider thumb, WebKit appearance none. We don't want to see it to begin with, but then we want to start giving it a width. Then we could just start to style it like we usually do. Let's give it 16 pixels wide, and then a height also 16 pixels because we want it to be round. And we can give it a border radius of 50%. That'll make it round. And background color, make it the same color as we have here. I'm just gonna copy it. Where is it? Ah, not the hover, but this one here. Where are we? Here we go. So now we can see it again. Now it's here. It looks better. It looks good. It looks wonderful. So we're going to do the same thing for Firefox, and that is, we can just copy this one. Actually, let me copy the whole thing here. But instead of WebKit slider thumb, here we have to call it Moz range thumb. So MOZ range thumb. Moz is Mozilla Firefox. And it's exactly the same thing we need right here. But actually you can see there's no border here, but in Firefox will automatically add a border. So we're just gonna remove that here. None. I hope you trust me on this. I'm not gonna show you how it looks like in Firefox right now, but you can play around with it. And now we want to make the track. That is the one that's behind it here. So you can see from minimum to maximum. We cannot see that right now, but let's style that one up. And also here we're gonna type input, and it's of type range 2 colons here because we're gonna target WebKit first. So WebKit slider runnable track, it's called. Who came up with these words? And we're gonna give it a width of 100%. Then we are going to give it a height. Let's say 1 pixel. That's how wide you want it to be. And I'm gonna give it the same background color as I have done with, the light gray background. And that was DDD. So now we should be able to see that. It's right here. But as you can see, it's not going all the way from the left, from the minus to the plus here. And also we have a problem with it, the thumb here showing underneath the track. We're gonna have to take care of that up here. That's only this works fine in Firefox, by the way. You don't have to do anything about it there. But this is the WebKit slider thumb. So right here, I'm gonna have to add a negative margin. So mar to the top, just to pull that thumb up, and it's gonna be -8 pixels here. So you should see now it's here in the middle, and -8 pixels because the height and is 16 pixels here. So that's half of that. We don't have to do that for this, but what I want to do here actually is I want to make this a little bit wider. So I'm gonna give it a width up here, and I only want to give it like 70% because I don't want it to be as wide as the box we're in. So I want it to be don't want it to squish the minus and the plus button here. But this looks pretty good so far. Actually, we should also, now it's getting a little bit messy here, but let's just remove this this border here so it looks a little bit better. We don't need that anymore. Let's save that. Okay, looks pretty good. Yep, looks nice. All right, so far so good. We need to add this for Firefox as well. So this is the runnable track. I'm gonna copy this one here and then add the code for Firefox. Yeah, this is kind of the same thing, but we have to just call it Moz range track. Just like that. It's gonna be the width and everything is gonna be the same here. All right, so that's about it, and it kind of looks pretty good. There's one thing we're missing on the finished version here. I have this beats per mesh so we can see what this button does. So I'm just gonna go in and add that. And let's go and do that in the index HTML file here. So we have underneath this measures here, we can just make another, let's just make it a span, give it a class name of beats per measure text. And right now I'm just gonna type out beats per measure. Well, it's gonna be that all the, it's never gonna change, so it's just gonna be static here. Beats per measure, I can see that here. We need to style it up a little bit here. We want to put it in the center. Let's just go to the end of the CSS file here, and that will be beats per measure text let's align it to the center. So text align center. And let's change the font size to 0.5 ems. And we want it to be all uppercase, so text transform uppercase. All right, that looks pretty good. So now we have this metronome here. It's in the center of the browser. We can go ahead and we can add, but nothing happens, you know, when we click on these buttons, nothing happens at all. Of course, we want it to be able, we want to hook up these buttons, so when I click on this one, it'll decrease to 139, 138, and so on and so forth. And also, we want to hook up this slider here. We're going to do that in the next video. We're going to add the JavaScript, and we're going to play around with an accurate timer and see if we can make some sort of metronome. But first, we need to hook up all of these things so they play well together, so that tempo updates and things like that. We're going to do that in the next video, so please join me for that. See you there.